Today I'm going to show you how to make a microwavable bowl cozy. These are bowl holders that you can put in the microwave with your soup or chili or oatmeal as you heat it up. And when the bowl gets hot and your soup's done, you can take it out and your hands will be protected by this insulated cozy. So these are really fun to sew and super useful. You can also use them for cold snacks like ice cream to protect your hands. So the pattern for this comes in 4 sizes and you can print it off on my website. There's a link in the description and then we'll sew it. I'll show you how to sew it together. So the PDF pattern includes 4 sizes for this bowl cozy project. The smallest one is for a 4-inch bowl. That is kind of a dessert size bowl or just a small children's bowl. And the standard size fits just kind of a standard bowl. That's a 6-inch bowl, basic cereal bowl. This will probably be the one you want to use if you're making these as gifts. The next size up is the large, and this will fit a 7 or 8-inch bowl. So that's kind of a jumbo bowl, just an oversized cereal bowl. And then the largest size will fit a 9-inch bowl, or even a larger bowl if it contours up. And this is great for side dishes, for serving heating up green beans or something in the microwave. So pick your bowl size and print your pattern and let's get started. To get started, you'll need to cut out 2 layers of the pattern in the size that you're wanting to make. I'm going to make the standard size, so I cut out a polka dot and a blue for the lining. So you can use the same fabric if you want or choose 2 different prints. If you use 2, you can reverse the bowl and you'll have 2 different ways to use it. And then 2 layers of batting. I just cut them bigger than my fabric piece. You'll also need a ruler long enough to reach end to end. And then a way to mark your fabric. You can either use a fabric marker that's air soluble, or this is a hair marker and you can use that to crease the fabric. So both work. And then pins and sewing scissors. So the first step is we're going to take 1 layer of batting and 1 layer of fabric. We'll set the other ones aside and to smooth it down, we're going to draw a line from the top corner to the opposite bottom corner and then again on the other side. So we're going to make an X. It's already kind of shaped like an X. We're going to make an X with the fabric marker. And then I like to put in a couple of pins to hold it down. So we're going to sew over these lines to hold the layers together. At this point, if you want to sew more lines to kind of give your bowl a different texture, you can sew more straight lines, you can sew a grid pattern or any pattern design you want. But these 2 lines will be important just to hold the fabrics together. So once you've done that, we're going to stitch right over the top of both of those lines to hold the pieces together. Once you have sewed those lines, we are going to take the layers and cut out the batting, excess batting from around the edges. So just use your fabric as the pattern piece here. And I like to do this versus cutting out the batting ahead of time, just because batting has a tendency to stretch and warp. So if you have already sewn it to your fabric, it's less likely to do that. Be sure to cut out the little darts. These are just little triangles. Okay, so now got your pattern piece ready to go with batting on the back. And what we're going to do is fold it in half and match up the dart here on the sides. So you're going to want to match up the dart fabric. Be careful, your batting can sometimes skew. So match up those two fabrics, and if the batting moves a little bit, that's okay, but you want to make sure those two layers are nice and matched up, lined up, and then we're going to pin into them. And like I said, the batting we can trim later, so if it's not perfect, that's okay. We're going to follow the fabric though for this. And then you're going to sew the dart. So I'm going to draw where we're going to sew, just so you can see. The dart is going to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you want to take your ruler, and you don't have to draw this line, I'm just showing you where we're sewing. So we're going to sew from the top of the triangle to the bottom and back stitch up both the top and the bottom. All right, so I've sewn that dart, and now that'll give the bowl cover cozy a little contour. So we're going to repeat that with all 3 other sides. Once you've sewn all 4 darts, this is what your bowl cover is going to look like. You see it has the contour to fit the bowl in, and it'll kind of sit up like that. So next we're going to create the same piece with a lining. So repeat all those steps with your lining fabric and batting. Now you have 2 sides of the bowl cozy. So the next step, we're going to just trim off the seam allowance to the darts down to 1/8 of an inch. This will just help reduce bulk a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to turn one of the bowl cozies right side out, and then turn the other one inside out, and layer them together and match up all the corners and the darts. So we're going to pin them, pin the corners. I like to start by pinning the corners, and then when you get to the darts, to make it less bulky, we're going to push one of the dart seam allowances to the left and one to the right. So what I like to do is kind of just line them up and pinch the seam allowances so that one is going that way and one is going that way. And then if you just put a pin in the middle or the side of that dart to kind of hold it, and then when you sew, just kind of make sure that it's lined up the same way. So we're going to sew all the way around the top of this bowl cozy, leaving a little opening along one of the straight edges. So the best place to leave an opening is between the dart right here and the corner. I don't like to leave the opening going into the corner because it's harder to get a straight corner after you've already sewn it, like if you've turned it right side out. So I like to leave the opening from here to about here to turn. And then for the stitch length, I recommend knocking it down to about a standard stitch length is 2.5 millimeters. Knock it down to about 2.2. That way your corners are less likely to pop open with a tighter stitch length. Okay, so once you've pinned it enough, we'll just go ahead and sew all the way around the top of the bowl, leaving about a 2 or 3 inch opening for turning. Okay, so I sewed all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, pivoting at the corners, and I used a smaller stitch length, about 2.2 millimeters, and then I left about 3 inches open along one of these straight edges in between the corner and the dart. So the next step, you can tell that it's starting to look like our bowl cozy, but we just need to trim up the seam allowances in the corners. So I like to trim the corners pretty well. And then if your seam allowance feels a little bulky, you can just kind of trim it down like that. And then I also like to clip into this little dart area a little bit, just because it gets a little thick there and I like it to be a little bit crisper of a point there. So do that to all your edges, and then we'll turn the cozy right side out and finish it. Okay, find your opening and pull the bowl cozy all the way through that. I like to kind of dig my fingers in and take the opposite corner to pull this out a little bit easier. And then you can use scissors or a chopstick or a marker to kind of get the points, the corners out a little bit better. You don't want to push too hard so that your corners stay. Another trick is you can use a seam ripper just to get that little point out without pulling it too far. And that's pretty good. And then we'll press the top edge before we top stitch to get the points to be nice and crisp. Okay, so now pulled all the corners out pretty well. If you have any extra threads, trim them up, and then right here where your opening is, you want to kind of push under a 1/4 inch so that we can get that nice and flat, and then go press this, especially the top edge, really well. Okay, after you've pressed the edges well, we're going to put about 2 pins into the opening and then top stitch around the bowl cozy 1/8 of an inch from the folded edges. And for this step, you can change your stitch length back to 2.5 or maybe even 2.7 millimeters just to give you a nice top finish. After you've top stitched, your bowl cozy is ready to go. And so you can put these in the microwave as long as you only have cotton materials, but use your best judgment for that. These are also great for ice cream because a lot of times your ice cream bowl gets too cold. So any hot or cold type of soup, ice cream, you can kind of put in a bowl and protect your hands.